chosen ones here. You warned them, and they laughed. Now they're living in the very storm you prophesied. Have you ever spoken the truth, only to be met with eye rolls, doubt, and silence, and then boom, it all played out just like you said? Once in a small town, there was a quiet young woman named Amara. She wasn't loud, she didn't brag, but she knew things. She would tell her friends, "Be careful of that deal, it's not what it seems," or "I don't feel good about this person's energy." And every time they'd smirk, brush her off, call her paranoid. Years later, the very same people were caught in betrayal, heartbreak, and loss, the same things Amara tried to save them from. And now, they whisper, "How did she know?" They're not laughing anymore, they're wishing they had listened. Chosen ones, you carry a divine frequency, a wisdom that transcends earthly noise, and now, finally, people are waking up to it. The same ones who ignored your insight, labeled you as dramatic or too deep, are now sitting in their regret, realizing you were never just guessing. You were being guided by the divine. Why do people only believe the truth when it punches them in the face? Why do chosen ones have to endure rejection just to later be respected? And how is it that the most underestimated soul ends up being the only one who was right all along? Wisdom is often rejected before it is respected. Chosen ones, this video is your confirmation. You're not crazy. You're not overly sensitive. You're anointed. Watch till the end, because today we're diving into the 7 divine reasons why people are now realizing how wise you truly are, and the powerful regret that's hitting those who once doubted you. Let this be your spiritual awakening and reminder that what's in you is from the Most High, and no man can deny what God has appointed. Point 1. Your silence was never weakness, it was strategy. People often confuse silence with weakness and quietness with confusion. But here's the truth: still waters run deep. In a world obsessed with noise, those who speak less are often misjudged. They're seen as unsure, naive, or even invisible. But those assumptions can be dangerous because real wisdom rarely announces itself. It doesn't need a megaphone, it doesn't need the spotlight. It watches, it listens, it studies. And when the time is right, it speaks with such clarity and precision that it shakes the room. You were never lost. You were simply observing, cataloging intentions, spotting inconsistencies, and reading the silent signals most people miss. While others filled the air with bravado and rehearsed opinions, you were tuning in to the unsaid. That's the gift of the quiet ones. Psychology even backs this up. Studies show that people who speak less often come across as more competent and trustworthy. This phenomenon, known as the silence heuristic, suggests that silence, when used wisely, amplifies perceived intelligence. Why? Because restraint signals self-control, and self-control suggests confidence. And confidence, real confidence, doesn't shout, it whispers. That moment when you finally spoke, perhaps just one well-placed sentence, wasn't just words. It was a revelation. It exposed the bluster, cut through the fog of ego, and brought truth to the surface. That's the beauty of a quiet mind. When it chooses to speak, it delivers impact, not noise. Your words didn't just correct them, they dismantled their delusion brick by brick. And now those who once dismissed you can't stop replaying that moment. Not because you said too much, but because you said just enough. And now, they remember the silence more than the sentence. They remember how your eyes saw right through them. They remember that you knew, you always knew, and said nothing. That's what haunts them. It wasn't just what you said that cut deep. It was everything you didn't say, every conversation you let them lead while you watched. Every moment they tried to outsmart you, not realizing they were only out-talking themselves. So let them be haunted. Let your silence echo louder than their noise ever did. Because wisdom doesn't come with a volume knob. It comes with timing. And you, the quiet one, mastered that art. Point 2, you saw through masks before they fell off. You've always had that unspoken knowing, haven't you? That sixth sense that tingles when something feels off, when someone's words say one thing but their energy whispers another. You couldn't always explain it, and you didn't always have evidence. But deep down you just knew. While others were busy being dazzled by charm, fooled by flattery, or pulled in by charisma, you were quietly observing the mismatch between their actions and their vibe. You didn't need to read text messages or overhear conversations. Their energy told you everything their mouths were trying to conceal. This isn't paranoia, it's intuition, and science backs it up. The human brain is wired to detect micro-expressions and emotional cues, even if we're not consciously aware of it. Psychologists call this thin slicing, the ability to make quick, accurate judgments based on limited information. Your brain picked up on those cues long before people's true colors were visible to the crowd. What others call a gut feeling was your subconscious intelligence doing its job at lightning speed. And here's what makes your gift even more powerful. You didn't stick around waiting for them to slip. You didn't need them to fumble publicly to validate what you already knew privately. While others clung to the illusion, hoping things would turn out differently, you had already disengaged, quietly, smoothly, with dignity. You walked away not with anger, but with awareness. And that's what separates the wise from the wounded. Then came the day when the truth surfaced. The mask cracked. The charming one slipped up. The sweet talker got caught. And the room gasped. Everyone else looked shocked, betrayed, stunned. But you were already at peace. You were miles ahead, not because you were lucky, but because you were aligned with your intuition, your values, and your boundaries. This ability to sense beyond the surface isn't just self-protection, it's spiritual discernment. It's emotional intelligence fused with divine guidance. Not everyone has it. Not everyone listens to it, but you did. And that's why you stayed safe while others got burned. So trust that instinct. Honor that inner voice. It has never lied to you. When the world is slow to see what you sensed from the beginning, smile gently and keep walking. You've already won the moment you chose yourself over their performance. Point 3. You warned them, they laughed. Now they're living your warning. You were right, the chosen one's silent burden and divine gift, chosen ones. Let's talk about those moments when your spirit stirred, your heart raced, and you knew deep down you had to speak, not to scare anyone, not to control the outcome, but because love whispered a truth into your soul too loud to ignore. You offered warnings, heartfelt and sincere, wrapped not in fear but in fierce care. Yet instead of gratitude, you were met with rolled eyes, sarcastic laughs, and dismissive comments. They called you paranoid. They labeled you too intense, too deep, too negative. But what they didn't understand was that your discernment isn't some wild imagination. It's spiritual radar. Science calls it pattern recognition. Faith calls it spiritual intuition. Whatever name you give it, the chosen carry an uncanny ability to detect things others ignore. According to studies in behavioral psychology, highly intuitive individuals subconsciously pick up on microsignals, tone changes, body language shifts, inconsistencies in patterns, and your soul reads them like a language. You knew something wasn't right. You saw the train coming before anyone else heard the tracks rumble. But when you opened your mouth to warn them, they were too busy dancing on the rails to listen. And now they're texting you in the midnight hour, not to check on you, not to apologize, but to whisper the words they once laughed at. You were right, not because they've suddenly become enlightened, but because the consequences have caught up, because that relationship fell apart, because that betrayal happened, because the storm you saw brewing finally hit, and now they're drenched in regret. But here's the secret, chosen one. They never wanted your wisdom. They wanted comfort. They wanted someone to tell them what they wanted to hear, not what they needed to face. You weren't the villain. They just weren't ready for truth in its rawest form. Now that reality has struck, they're left holding the wreckage of what you tried to help them avoid. Yet don't get bitter, get better. God often uses you not just to guide others, but to hold up a mirror to them. Your warnings weren't just for their benefit, but for their awakening. Some lessons require pain to penetrate. So let them sit with their consequences. Let them wrestle with the echo of your words. While they drown in regret, you rise in wisdom and peace. Point 4. You carried an ancient knowing in a modern world. There's something ancient about your soul, something that stretches far beyond the surface of your current life. You walk into a room and shift its energy without saying a word. You're not loud, but your presence is undeniable. You don't mimic trends or follow the noise of the world because you were never designed to echo the temporary. You were born to speak what's timeless, truth. And unlike trends, truth doesn't expire. It doesn't bend to popularity, nor does it need approval. It just is. And you, Earth Angel, have always known that deep down. People used to look at you and wonder, why are they like that? You didn't dress like the crowd. You didn't chase what everyone else was chasing. While others were wrapped up in appearances, you were digging for purpose. You saw through the surface, through people's masks, empty pursuits, and shallow talk. That used to make others uncomfortable. They'd dismiss you, label you as weird, or overlook you completely. But that rejection, it was actually divine protection. Because while they were sleeping on you, the universe was preparing you to wake them up. And now the tides are turning. The very people who mocked you for being different are quietly watching you. They're starting to realize that your oddness was actually originality, that your silence held wisdom, and your isolation bred clarity. What once made you an outcast is now making you magnetic, because people are hungry for something real, and you've always been real. Psychologically, this phenomenon has a name: the late appreciation effect. It occurs when people finally begin to value what they once ignored after they realize its rarity. You're that rarity, a soul from another age, rooted in truth, grounded in purpose, and awakened to deeper realities. Spiritual traditions call it being an old soul, someone who carries wisdom from previous lifetimes and a natural sensitivity to the unseen. And here's the truth: they weren't ready for you then, but now they're awakening. They're looking for direction, depth, and healing. And you, Earth Angel, are here to remind them. So don't shrink, don't dim. You weren't made to fit in. You were made to stand out and wake the world up, one awakened soul at a time. Point 5, your discernment wasn't luck. It was spiritual intelligence. What they once mocked as a lucky guess was never luck. It was a divine download. While others needed data, trends, and 10 sources before making a move, you just knew. It wasn't arrogance or wishful thinking, it was discernment. You didn't need all the pieces to solve the puzzle because the Spirit gave you the picture before the pieces even scattered. That feeling in your chest, that voice in your head, that gut instinct that didn't make sense on paper. It was never just a vibe, it was a whisper from the divine, guiding you like a compass in the fog. People didn't understand that. To them it seemed irrational, even delusional. You were too deep, too intense, or too paranoid. You warned them about situations and people, and they rolled their eyes. But when the very things you spoke of began to unfold, when betrayals surfaced, when truths were exposed, when opportunities came out of nowhere, they couldn't deny it anymore. You weren't guessing, you were guided. Neuroscience actually supports this phenomenon. The human brain is wired to pick up on subtle cues, micro-expressions, changes in energy, inconsistencies in behavior, and your intuition processes it faster than your logic can explain it. But when your intuition is aligned with spiritual insight, that's a divine download. It's like catching the Wi-Fi signal from heaven. The result? A kind of foresight that's unexplainable but undeniable. And now, the same people who dismissed your instincts as weird vibes are realizing they were survival tools in disguise. Suddenly, your quiet observations, your decision to walk away from chaos, your refusal to trust certain smiles, they all make sense. They're wondering how you knew, how you saw what they couldn't, how you heard what was never spoken aloud. But here's the twist. You didn't need them to validate your gift. You've always known you were tuned into something higher. Your sensitivity wasn't a flaw, it was a signal, a God-given radar for truth in a world addicted to masks. So don't downplay your intuition. Don't water down your discernment to make others comfortable. What they call strange might just save their lives one day. Your vibes are divine, and your connection is your calling. Keep listening, keep trusting, because what they once mocked, they now marvel at. Point 6. You took the fall for being right too soon. Let's be real. Truth-tellers have never had it easy. From ancient prophets to modern whistleblowers, those who speak hard truths often pay a steep price. Why? Because truth makes people uncomfortable. It challenges their delusions, shakes up their egos, and forces them to confront realities they'd rather ignore. If you've been the one in the room to say what everyone else was afraid to admit, you probably know what it feels like to be isolated, criticized, or even outright rejected. It's a lonely path, especially for the chosen ones. Those spiritually awake individuals who see through the lies and refuse to play along with the world's illusions. Maybe you spoke up about injustice at work, warned someone about a toxic relationship, or simply refused to compromise your values. And in return, you were treated like the problem. People rolled their eyes, spread rumors, or distanced themselves from you altogether. But here's the twist that life always brings. Truth ages like fine wine. Give it time, and suddenly those who dismissed you are doubling back, rereading your words, watching your growth, and ironically seeking your guidance. The whispers that once discredited you have turned into questions like, "How did you know?" History shows us this is nothing new. Galileo was imprisoned for insisting the earth revolved around the sun. Nelson Mandela was jailed before becoming a global icon for justice. Even in spiritual realms, truth-tellers like Jesus, Moses, and Buddha were rejected by their own people before being revered across centuries. Their stories remind us that rejection is often the rite of passage for those who carry divine insight. Now that the tables have turned, it's tempting to gloat. After all, you endured ridicule for simply being ahead of your time. But the real power move? Stay gracious. Let them sit with their regret while you keep rising. You don't need revenge. Your success is loud enough. The same voices that once mocked you are now asking for your advice. That's the power of staying true to your path. So keep walking, truth teller. You were never meant to blend in. You were born to awaken others, and whether they admit it or not, they're finally starting to see it. Point 7. They now know you were sent, not self-made. Your wisdom didn't come with a degree or a fancy certificate. It was forged in fire. It came from nights when the world was silent, and the only sound you heard was your own heartbeat echoing in the dark, praying for strength, for clarity, for a reason not to give up. You didn't read about endurance. You lived it. You didn't learn resilience in a classroom. You picked it up piece by piece after each breakdown, each betrayal, each disappointment that could have crushed you, but instead carved something sacred within you. See, true wisdom is often born in the wilderness, those lonely, hidden seasons where no one clapped, no one helped, and no one noticed. While others were showing off on the surface, you were being molded in secret. You were sitting with your pain, not escaping it. You were asking deeper questions, having honest conversations with God, not about the why me, but about the what now. That's a different kind of training. It's divine. It builds character, not just knowledge, discernment, not just data. And now that you speak, people pause. They feel the weight behind your words because they're not borrowed, they're lived. The very people who once dismissed you, ignored your insight, or laughed at your silence are suddenly alert. They realize you were never naive. You were just gracious. You gave your wisdom freely, and they didn't honor it. But regret is a heavy teacher. Still, don't harden your heart. Don't grow bitter. Let your evolution be your evidence. God allowed your struggle to sharpen you and used their ignorance to school them. Your rise is your response. Keep walking in quiet power, because real wisdom doesn't shout. It doesn't need to. It's already felt, already known, and finally respected. Chosen ones, never let people's initial rejection make you question your divine insight. You were ahead, not wrong. You were led, not lost. And you were sent, not seeking approval. Their regret is not your revenge, it's your reminder. A reminder that spiritual wisdom is a gift that doesn't always get applause, but it always gets proven. Keep walking in light. Keep speaking truth and never stop trusting that He who anointed you will always make your wisdom known. In due time, let them regret, let God exalt, and let your wisdom keep shaking the room. Stay awake, angels, your spiritual journey is only getting brighter.